Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cannon Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Coman. Today, I am honored and privileged to be here with Coach Anthony Rouzier. He was already a guest here on this podcast, and you guys can look that episode up. It actually did quite well, and I think the reason it did quite well is because of Coach's authentic approach, not only to coaching, not to how, he's building this program down here at Santa Margarita High School, but who he is as a person and how he develops relationships with other human beings, let alone athletes. So there's a lot of golden nuggets that you guys can take away just from going back and listening to that, including his story, his background, how he got out here. We will leave those in that episode, and we're going to dig a little bit deeper here today. So, Coach, welcome back to the show. And I'll get you started, man. I want to give you an opportunity to reflect on from that time that you did the first interview, reflecting on really the growth that's happened within the culture of the program, because if I recall correctly, that was really at the beginning of you getting the head coaching job. And so I recall you talking about, putting the significant level of, attention into developing men and, I remember you saying, having guys come back to or getting the invite to their wedding. And I thought that was really cool. So how's it going, Coach? How's it been?
Everything's going well. It's crazy how much time goes by and how much things change, but how much things stay the same. Mm-hmm. One thing for sure that's definitely changed is my beard is whiter and my head is balder. I think my weight's the same. Maybe it's a little more. I don't know. But it's been a great journey. You learn every day. Mm-hmm. And going through this experience, you're always doing it with other people, right? And football is like everything else. It's all about relationships. It's the relationship business. Football is just a vessel to connect with people and to help people become the best version of themselves, us included, not just the kids, mm-hmm. right? We talked offline, and you were talking about that connection that people have and how there has to be, a duality, and there has to be a shared experience, and there has to be a buy-in in order to make something work, mm-hmm. right? It's not 100 or 0. It's not 50-50. Like we talk about, it's 100-100. Mm-hmm. So like when I look back on, talking before into now and just kind of reflecting on the things that have happened, like what we've done well, what we could do better, I think the biggest thing that I look at and say is like, one, you got to stay authentic. You got to stay true to you. You got to be rigid, and you got to be staunch about your standards, mm-hmm. but knowing how to apply them to different people and different kids, right? There's style and there's fundamentals, mm-hmm. right? So how do you apply your fundamentals of hard work or just anything to connecting to some player or some coach differently? And so when I look at over the past year or so, or 2 years now, right? It's been mm-hmm. 2 years. Man, time is flying.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I've know and realize that I got to do better and continue to do better is just learning how to coach your coaches. Like you truly are, especially in this league, the CEO of an operation. Mm-hmm. Last year I kind of got thrusted in. Well, I did get thrusted into being the DC. I took on the challenge, and I don't want to say I regret it, but I think I missed out on what this program needs, which is more of someone at a high level that can oversee all of the different pockets of the program and then really be focused on the relationship building aspect of it. So when I look back and reflect, that's something for sure that, if that opportunity were to arise again, but for like if you're like in the NFL, for example, where there's not recruiting, there's mm-hmm. not parent relationships, like you see guys be coordinators and coaches, but at a level like this, a level like college, you really want to focus on seeing the whole program, being able to touch the entire program, and staying true to those fundamentals so you can like have the time mm-hmm. built into your schedule to be able to connect to people and just talk to them and say, hey, how you doing? Like I just had a long conversation with one of our players just now who's going through some stuff and was just able to dial back into that. And I think I lost a little bit of that last year, and I think that for us, you don't – the wins and the losses aren't the full barometer of success, but last year, there were things about our season that we would have liked to win some more games, and we had some tough losses, and credit to the teams that we played. But more so than that was making sure that we connect, really know who you are, know what your core principles are. How do you adapt? How do you keep your message fresh to the kids? How do you give them new material? That was something we did too. We read Legacy again, and it didn't quite hit the way that I'd hoped it would. Because you got to remind yourself that every year is a new year, like we were talking about. But at the same time, they're also kids. They like fresh new material. So it's that duality, it's that dichotomy of how do you connect those same fundamentals with style that gives them something that they can stick to. So when I looked back on this year, this past year, these past 2 years, things that I think that I needed to do better is really understanding, especially at this level, how involved and how engaged the parents are. And in this age, it's much different than when we played high school football.
Yeah.
It is full on communication and being a great communicator and an over communicator, and then laying out a plan and having standards that make sure that they're communicated across the board in a loving way to say, hey, we want you to be here, but these are our expectations. And if they don't fit your desires, then this may not be the best fit for you. I got a really cool call last week, just out of the blue, because one of the guys on our team, one of the kids on our team, his dad is Gift Smith, who coaches for the Chargers. And so I got a phone call from Gus Bradley. And Gus Bradley took time out of his day during the combine to give me a call and just talk to me about, like, your role as a coach is to serve and to impact. And you see a guy that's at that level, you know what I mean, where those are grown men, so they're doing different things. They have their own lives, they have their own children, but the focus on serving and impacting your team, I think, was just an awesome thing to hear from him. But just the same type of deal, like, how do you serve and impact? How do you help these parents with their young men, with their children, their treasure, fit what you're trying to do, and how you do it together?
Right.
And I think that that's the biggest thing that when I look at it now, what we need to do as a program to continue to improve is that. And then really just adding a spiritual component into it. And really utilizing the vessel and the gift of being here in God's grace, at a Catholic school, so we get to promote and to share God's word, and for that to be something that is a focal point of our conversation as coaches and with the kids. Right. I know that for me, that's been something I've been getting the Bible every morning, and I think that's been really important for my journey, just because it's a deal.
Yeah, I think that spirit can kind of glue it all together.
Absolutely.
In a cool way.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to reflect. I think there's a couple things that I'd like to dig into a little bit deeper on that aspect. What are some specific things in terms of, like, things you've done maybe out in the community? You talk often about becoming your best self. You guys kind of set the standards. If the standards are, or the expectations and values are kind of, met on both sides, then you've got something that can grow and can work.
Right.
Talk into some of the specifics, that you guys have had some success with, or maybe even things that you've learned from. You mentioned the Legacy book that had an impact on one group and didn't necessarily have the same impact on the next group.
Sure.
I think these are cool things for people to learn from.
Yeah, I think the idea that, your culture is going to grow and you're going to establish things and hopefully always move forward, right? And you can provide ownership, right? So, like, ownership and involvement for your program, but you got to know sometimes it's too early to do that, right? So you got to make sure that you're still providing the leadership as the coach and the coaches to those kids. And just expecting them to have the tools to do it is a lot to ask, even if they've been in your program for a few years. And that's no slight on the kids, but it's just a lot to ask of them. So to be able to, create that platform for them, and then you being the sounding board for them, I think is really important. So, we did more things last year, community building stuff, like we did beach days and things like that. But I think where we realize too now more so that we need to do is to get more into, like, service element stuff. We had a handful of kids go do pick up trash with Toyota the other day. We're talking about going down to the Navy warfare base,
cool.
and doing, some type of training and leadership. The president of the school, Andy Sulik, his brother actually oversees all the training down at the Naval Academy. And there's a guy that works directly with him that is now he's a schoolhouse trainer. He's actually a Together Shape kid.
Oh, yeah,
Brady
yeah.
Palmer. Yeah, so Tony Palmer. Yeah, so
one of the Palmers. Yeah.
Tapping into that wisdom and just getting that that material and understanding from people, I think, is really important, and shared experience. Jim Kunow is somebody that we're going to bring on, who was at Olu for a handful of years, and then at Canyon and at Rancho Christian, and won 3 titles and 3 different divisions and 3 different teams, and talks all the time about the spiritual development and the character development, and how much of that is so beneficial for the kids, and really is the separator between different teams. Like you were talking about,
definitely,
teams you were working with that weren't the most talented, but they had a togetherness about them. It's that adage, morale is to physical is 4 is to 1, right?
Right.
So I'm really excited because where we're at right now, just in being able to understand and adapt to the transfer portal. This thing is crazy.
I have that on my list of questions. So actually, we can skip to that.
No,
it's actually next.
Well, it kind of goes into
Right.
just being comfortable, understanding that it's all about fit and knowing that people are going to come and they're going to go. And you have to be true to your standards, and you have to have a great committee of people around you. You have to have great trust and a great alignment with the administration, your coaches, your kids, and then being able to find the signal and ignore the noise, because there's a lot of noise. It's tough for a lot of these kids. But, for us, we dialed back on the discipline big time. And I think that was something that we needed to do better last year, but wearing the right shirt. Everyone has a shirt. We have a T-shirt club, per se, that we've had over the past, this past winter, that one of our coaches went to watch Sark talk at Texas, and he had these different tiers based on your performance, so you wear different shirts. So we have a gray shirt and a blue shirt, and perfect attendance and perfect communication, all that gets you in the blue shirt club. And every week we would have a recalibration of who would be in the club. And you just watched how just something that little of accountability in praising kids for doing the right thing versus punishing them for doing the wrong thing had such a positive impact on our program. You can't play in this league without talent. So to have talent, but then have guys that are playing together and are all bought in, because it comes back to it's what we talked about. Your whole mission with this podcast is to share the messages and not to hide it. There's no secret sauce, right? Because there's so many factors going on in people's lives. So what we're doing today or what one team's doing, we could sit here and lay the whole blueprint out, but you still aren't that guy who woke up that day, right? Or you're not that coach who's got kids at home, or you're not that kid who may have something going on or feeling great about things. So all those different combinations of stuff lead into a team. And so football, like anything else, right? It's just about building great teams. So how do you preserve your core, create your core, keep your same fundamental self moving into to your next season, comfortable with 10 kids leaving, 10 kids coming? Who are those kids? How are they part of your program? How are their parents buying into what you're doing? And then making sure that you have clear, defined standards, that these are the expectations, and making sure that people abide by them. And if they don't, and it's not a good fit for them, then that's fine.
I appreciate you talking into this, and I think this isn't necessarily on my list, but just hearing you and listening to you, I think it'd be cool and important for you to kind of speak to the potential recruits, the potential families that might be looking, because inevitably they are going to be watching. Right. And I think helping people, listeners, and even coaches, that are going to watch this, understand what are the values and expectations. Is there a set standard? Is there a philosophy that you guys have kind of developed and embodied? Right. You've been kind of creating this culture and this safe space for a couple years now. So I'm curious to hear, what are the things that surface?
Sure. So for us, like we talked about in the first podcast, right, our purpose here is to build champions. And that's champions in life. To rehash, it's heart, home, harvest, and hardware, right? So heart is, that transformational relationship. We want to get invited to your wedding. But you can't have love without truth. You got to be truthful to your kids. You got to love hard. You got to love tough. You got to be willing to be coached. Again, it goes back to what we were talking about. I want to be invited to your wedding, but the kid has to let us in to be able to connect, right? And we got to communicate through those hard times, right? We got to be willing to be vulnerable and work through whatever's going on to make sure that we meet where we want to go. So for us, that's a super important part of who we are as a program. One thing that, we need to improve on, but we want to do is really engage our alumni base, because Santa Margarita is a 40-year decision. We just had our alumni golf tournament yesterday, and I was talking with some alumni that just talked about being able to engage our kids and be able to connect with them, to have like an internship, to be able to go out and learn something beyond football, right? And so those are things that we're working on, and we've connected different kids. And we have a kid that's at Princeton right now, and he connected with a former alumni, with an alumni player that was at Princeton. And so they have a relationship, right? That's that relationship comes from Santa Margarita, right? And so that's a privilege that you get when you come here, right? This is a high academic school. So if you're looking for high academics, this is a place to come, right? This is a place where you can harvest your talents. For us, we're about challenging you intellectually. The school by in and of itself academically is the best school around that competes at a high level. It's like a Stanford and a Notre Dame. Again, it puts you in a position to be not only successful in college, but you could be successful in life just from the relationships you have here. So those things have to be important for families if they want to come here.
Right.
If it's all ball, it won't work. It's going to be hard work. You're going to be challenged. You're going to be coached. It's a lot kind of like, we talk a lot about how Deion's been very forthright about his standards and his criterias. And his are different than ours, but the fundamental truths are the same, right? So having that, right? You want to harvest your talents? Well, you got to work hard, and you got to want to work, and you got to want to be coached, and you got to want to show up on time, and those things have to matter to you. So we're looking for those types of families. We're looking for families that really understand that when you get here, it's not about what you do here, it's where you go from. We actually just saw Father Boyle. He's the guy who founded Homeboy Industries. Man, you got to get that guy in your podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
He might have a busy schedule, but he's a father. He's a preacher that, he just told a story. I just went and talked, listened to him talk about founding in his church, which is was in the lowest socioeconomic area in all of LA, and he had 8 rival gangs all in one church, in one parish, and how when the riots in '92, after the 4 policemen got acquitted after the Rodney King trial, his place, his pastor or his parish was the one place that didn't have violence, because he was able to create this environment with all this tension around and all these people that have competing survival, right? They can come together and be together in a safe space. And for us, we're striving for that. I don't care where you come from, what you look like, how much money you have, whether you're white, black, Mexican, any other Asian, any other race, Catholic or not, obviously it's a Catholic school. So we obviously want to encourage and have Catholics here, but we're not going to judge you for not being Catholic. If you want to come here and you're focused on hard work, you're focused on academics, you're focused on development, this is a place for you. This is a place for you to come and your family, and in turn, we can get to our last part, which is the hardware, right? We want to win. We want to compete. We want to make this an inclusive school, and we're looking for some dogs, man. Still are. Desire to achieve greatness, attention to execute, willpower to persevere, and then we're a gang, right? And it's about that family. So you got to have a burning desire. You got to really want to be here and want to do it. If you're coming to play football, you want to be a part of something and you want to play at the next level, or you want to use this experience to help you at the next level, right? You want to have that attention. We're going to teach you how to focus and how to execute and to learn the craft of the game, so that when you get to the next spot, right, when you harvest your talent, you can walk in the room, you can get on the whiteboard, and you can draw up, this is what 2 high looks like. If you're a quarterback, this is 1 high. This is, this guy's capped, so he's blitzing, or you're on defense. You're okay, this level of the running back is deep, so he's probably going to come downhill. Okay, no, he's even, so he's going to run lateral, or he's in front, you expect pass. All of those different nuanced pieces of information that I didn't get out of high school. And I was really coached well, but we just didn't have the time, right? We didn't have the coaches and the resources like you have here. We have 11 guys on campus.
Right.
Then that's what we're looking for, and guys that want to build it and build their own trail and be a part of something that gives people an opportunity to go play in the best league in the country and beat the best teams in the country and every week. But our kids do better in college than they did in high school. And that's what matters, right? Going back to Father Boyle, this isn't a place you go to. This is a place where you go from, right? Like you go from here. You can be yourself, right? We're going to walk with you. We're going to talk to you. We're going to let you be yourself, right? We tell our kids all the time, be yourself, be positive, but also be coachable, right? And then you grow and you get to be a part of something bigger than yourself, right? And in turn, you become a bigger version of yourself.
I often say pain is the best teacher.
That's right.
Well,
I'm learning.
That was a lot, and that was great. And honestly, if I can help kind of articulate what I heard everything, but home or heart, start in the heart, create your home, harvest it, and that will inevitably yield you some hard work.
That's right.
And that's essentially the philosophy that can always be, even if you get out of line, come back to the heart and start there.
Exactly.
And restart it.
Exactly. Every value has intersection with the other, right? Sometimes you're going to be tired, right? You're not going to have the willpower today. Where do you draw it from? You draw it from your gang, your family, right? Or you just go back to your purpose, right? Or when your purpose withers, you lean back on your family, right? Or like, I can't get my attention. I need my willpower. Like what are the things that are going to help me get to where I want to go, right? Because eventually, ultimately, you're trying to achieve something, right? What we're trying to do is use this, like you're talking about, to make a positive impact on others, to help others feel good when I'm in the room because I'm serving and giving to them. Father Boyle talked about, it's not just about doing the service, but like connecting with those and having kinship with those that you're providing service for, to give compassion and kindness towards them, right? You don't just go into a lower socioeconomic neighborhood, pick up some trash and be like, I served and helped.
Right.
No, like how do you walk with, how do you live, how do you empathize, how do you connect with those? And even in the face of when people like don't really get what you're trying to do, like, or they're not open to it, whatever it is, family members, coaches, neighborhoods, whatever, like that you're still willing to do it, right? That was the whole walk of Jesus. That's the whole connection of like that nonstop pursuit of I'm going to sit with you and let you be you and love you for you and still help you get better, right? And you're getting me so much better,
right?
Love
that. And I think that's a great segue into, we're in the sports world and most of this audience is coaches, athletes, and I think collectively we get to, as you just mentioned, raise the level of compassion and empathy. Those are the two like strong keywords that I just heard you express. And this leads to my question, and we've kind of beat around this a little bit throughout the conversation, but you're in the Trinity League, essentially the SEC of high school football. You basically have Mater Dei and Bosco, Alabama, Georgia.
Right.
It's kind of one and the same. So I'm curious. I mean, you've kind of talked to it, but is empathy and compassion the way that Santa Margarita becomes a perennial powerhouse? Is it a combination of all these things that you've been discussing? Like, what's the recipe, Coach? Like, what do you have in mind?
Man, well, one is very difficult. And you got to be staunch and you got to stick to it and you got to stay in the arena. If I had all the answers to the recipe, we probably would be, I don't know, I would say farther along, but we would be competing and playing. But situations are different. It's a great league, great coaches, great programs, you know what I mean? That even if there's coaching changes, for example, like at Mater Dei, you just have such a embedded system in place that it's bigger than the coach. I think that says a lot about the coach. I think it says a lot about Rollo. And, that it's not withering right away because people understand that it's the foundation. So it's that duality of representing your program but being the face of the program, embracing that. I think that's something that I've learned that I got to do better. You know, like you're the head coach, be the head coach, right? So for us, it's about sticking to who we are and having that same value proposition of understanding who you are. Like, we still want to get the best kids from around here, right? You always want to win inside out. You always want to be able to connect with those people that understand how important academics are, right? And it's like when Stanford hit its stride or Notre Dame hit its stride, like that's what this program is. So in the SEC, at Vanderbilt, but that's not really, it's more of the, like, how would Notre Dame compete, right? And how do they do it? And, Coach Freeman's come by the office, and we were talking and just, how they've been able to adapt their program in Notre Dame to kind of the new age to connect with these kids and be viable in recruiting, right? Because there's an element of that, right? You can't, like, sometimes I feel like I'm just such an old man, like back in my day, just the way, like, all the stuff, like, you got to be able to be in the mix. Social media's got to be on point. Your marketing has to be on point. Your ability to engage, right? And so again, it goes back to that whole, how do you connect with these kids with being able to understand that you're the coach and not their friend? Like, that's not your purpose.
Right.
Your purpose is not to be their friend. My purpose is not to be like, oh, Coach Rouzier is so cool, right? If we connect on something and there's a mutual agreement, they're like, Rouzier is kind of cool, which I don't know if any of them say. But you know what I mean? Like, it's not about that. It's about, like, all right, how do you move this forward and have a unique brand that helps people understand and get to where they want to go. But where they want to go and what they want to be a part of has to align with what this school is about, and that's just going to be different. I mean, we're no matter what population is around, we're still landlocked by a mountain. You know what I mean? So it's different. So for us, it's about getting the best kids around. It's about, still at the end of the day, you got to get guys in the trenches, right? To build a program where people want to play for each other. Right? Like, at the end of the day, like, that's the purpose. The training is what separates our esteemed military. Sure, there's, our artillery's as good as it gets, but that's not the separator. The separator is the training, right? It's the talent is whatever. It's the training. But with the training, it's the skills are one thing, but it's the bigger purpose is what really separates them. Right. And I think that's what I'm on the pursuit of. I think every coach is, right? Like, but that's the part. I was talking to Coach Kunal about that. Those are the things. Like, everyone talks about ball, right? And it's not about ball. And I think for me last year, it's too much ball and not enough of that. Like, how do you connect and make sure and really read the room? And so, yeah, compassion and empathy are everything in that, right? And creating an environment where that force multiplier, where people are playing for each other, is holistic and so powerful.
Yeah, the force multiplier of love. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's a beautiful thing. Well, so I feel like that's a pretty good recipe. I mean, just from my seat and understanding what I've seen in the industry and in the game. But what about all this NIL stuff? And how do you approach that? What's your even thoughts on it? Is it a part of, the ethos of this program? What do you think?
Oh, man.
Because it's the Trinity League.
Sure.
I mean, it's here.
It is the Wild West. NIL's a Wild West. The Trinity League's a Wild West. So this is like a combination of all of it. In the former life, went to law school and business school, and I've always been pro, players and pro compensation and things making sense. So I definitely agree with I think the NCAA, looking back on it, would, if they would have got out in front of it earlier, I think would have curbed so much of the massive shift from super regulation and no regulation.
Yeah.
And so, for us, as it trickles down into, basically the Premier League in high school football, amongst other leagues, but, like, we don't have NIL deals for our kids. But it's as long as you keep the main thing, right? Like, really, right? It especially is about your faith, about your family, football, right? Well, school, sorry. Yeah, there we go. Faith, family, academics and football, right?
Yeah, sure,
what I mean? Like keeping all the things that are important, that are going to last. One's going to last for eternity. One's going to last much longer than football lasts forever while you're alive. Another one's going to last longer than football with your degree, and then football because you love it, right? So those things. Then, I'm not against it. There's rules and structures in place for how the way that schools can interact with NIL, so we don't get involved with it. But I'm not, you have to be open and understanding of it, because if you're not, then you're just going to sit back here and you're watching schools like in college that decided they didn't want to focus on it and they killed them.
Right. So have you had kids, come to you and ask, or come to another coach on the staff, like, for some advisement?
Well, as far as just in general, just like moving
hey,
on
coach,
to the next place?
Yeah, this company hit me up.
Yeah.
How do I go about
No, we
this?
haven't had anything like that. Like, there's been, like, little things that kids have done. They just can't do it with the school logo, but nothing where it's like, hey, there's this big company that's going to offer X, Y, Z. Not to my knowledge. No one's brought it to me. But we're going to move into that space, and we don't really get involved, but just have people around that have been, some pretty prominent lawyers that are in the NIL space are from this area, and people I know pretty well. So they have resources to talk to. Again, I definitely am not the expert on that, so I pass that to those. And I just think that when we talk to our kids about that, right, it's big for the next step too, right? It can't be your driving factor to why you're going to a school.
Right.
It can't be. Like, it has to be part of it can be part of the equation. If it's not, that's cool too. And for the majority of the students, it's not, right? But for those that may have that as an opportunity, like, as long as it's a utility and it's not an ego-driven thing and it's not all about the money, then yeah, like, okay, sure. Like, there's situations where you could help people's families out and things like that. And those things, that matters. And I'm good with that, right? But the education's the most important part.
As long as it's based on the brand that you guys are, essentially building here from an individual out kind of standpoint. That makes sense. Well, Coach, this has been fun, man.
Yeah.
Honestly,
sure,
I think I'll leave you with any pointers, anything that you want to leave to the football world. We'll leave this broad for the end. And it could come from a health space, from a spirit space. You could be talking to a young kid that is in 6th grade and wants a word of advice from Coach Rouzier up here at Santa Margarita.
Dream big. No one rises to low expectations. So dream big. Use your resources. I talk to our kids all the time, like, I'm a resource. Use me. Your parents, use them. By using them, listen to them. I remember talking to my parents right when I got the job, and I was bitching about something, with the kids, and they just kind of gave me that side eye thing, like that side eye emoji, like with the little thing, like, oh, how convenient, huh? Yeah. This was you. You know what I mean? So the sooner you can realize that there's people out there to help you, take advantage. And quite frankly, I'm telling you this from my own experience, the sooner you realize that you have the Spirit of God to help you and you tap into it, and you're willing to humble yourself and ask for help and not be afraid of being judgment, having those real honest conversations first with God, yourself, and others, knowing you want to go somewhere, you take it. And do you. Just Love do that. You, but, trust the people around you to say if you're off course a little bit to get you right. But trust your gut on who you are and what you do, because if you focus too much on the noise and trying to help work with too many people's opinions, you forget yours, right? And you forget how you do things. And I think that you got to be able to become a bigger version of yourself, but also hold on to the core of who you are. But tap into your fundamentals, tap into God, tap into your parents, tap into your close friends and family as you move forward. And just go for it, man. Go for it. You'll never know where you end up. I never thought I'd be in California.
I love that, and that's quite powerful. Hope you guys were really enjoying this conversation as much as I was as a listener and as the interviewer. And thanks for tuning in to the Cannon Sports Podcast here today. See you guys next time.